Hey guys, tonight we begin not with war or pyramids or golden tombs, but with purring, deep, content, ancient purring, the kind that seems to vibrate through stone walls and soft sand alike. We're going to Egypt, not the Egypt of chariots and conquests, but the Egypt of whiskers, naps, and names whispered under moonlight. You're arriving just before sunset in the city of Bubastis, a sacred place where cats are not only worshipped, but obeyed. The air smells of warm sandstone, crushed papyrus, and something faintly floral, probably lotus, but possibly cat breath. It's hard to tell. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you in Sao Paulo at midnight? Maybe Oslo? Still trying to fall asleep at 3 a.m.? I love seeing where the Temple of Dreams is reaching tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk slowly through the temple courtyard, your sandals pressing into the warm earth. The light is gold and lazy, slanting across rows of carved columns where cats stretch, blink, and return to whatever divine business they were definitely doing before you interrupted. They're everywhere, high up in alcoves, curled beside statues, leaping across rooftops like they own gravity. You pass one lounging on a pedestal that was, technically, built for a minor crocodile god, but now belongs to someone named, according to a nearby inscription, Nebamiao, which roughly translates to he who judges you while napping. It suits him. A robed priestess greets you with a small bow and guides you through a side passage lined with murals of cats in every imaginable pose, hunting, playing, grooming, meditating, possibly filing taxes. You wouldn't be surprised. She stops beside a tall doorway. This, she says, is the Hall of Names. Inside, the air is cooler. Stone pillars rise like frozen reeds, and in between them are dozens of low platforms, each one with a single cat, and beside each cat, papyrus scroll, tied with twine, sealed with wax. You're told that every sacred feline is given a name here, but not just any name. The naming is ceremonial, considered, and, above all, personal. No repeats within a dynasty, no casual fluffy or mittens. These names are meant to carry divinity, dignity, and a hint of feline sass. You notice one scroll already open. The name, Merisit Ashai, which you're told means she who watches the water but never drinks. The cat in question is currently licking the wall. Perfect. Historians still argue over just how sacred these cats were. Some claim they were treated better than priests. Others insist the naming customs were symbolic, not literal. And then there are those who believe the cats named themselves, and the scribes just tried to keep up. You lean down and meet the gaze of a sleek, black-furred cat with golden eyes that say, "I remember when you were dust." You whisper, "Do you have a name?" She yawns, and somewhere in the shadows, a scroll unties itself. You're ushered deeper into the Hall of Names, your footsteps muffled by reed mats and feline indifference. Cats lounge on pedestals, snooze in alcoves, or stalk shadows that may or may not be real. The priestess walks ahead of you with the quiet precision of someone used to moving around royalty, furry, sleepy, highly judgmental royalty. She pauses before a stone basin filled with still water and a ring of palm-sized scrolls. The first rule, she says, is no repeats. You arch an eyebrow. No repeats, she repeats. She explains. In each dynasty, once a sacred cat receives a name, that name is never used again. Not for another temple cat, not for a statue, not even for a hieroglyphic doodle in the back of someone's journal. It's about respect, she says, and options. Apparently, the ancient Egyptians didn't just believe in the uniqueness of the soul, they believed in the uniqueness of the feline personality, and names were tailored to that uniqueness, like silk to a pharaoh's shoulder. You're shown a list, handwritten, delicate, yet somehow dramatic. It spans 27 generations of temple cats. Names like Tefheru, he who sleeps facing east, Bastet Neru, she who purrs at the storm, Amun Mehet, he who fears nothing, except cucumbers. Okay, that last one may be a creative interpretation. You learn that naming was a major temple event, not as elaborate as coronations or crocodile wrestling festivals, but close. Once a name was chosen, it was registered, sung, etched into walls, and even inscribed on tiny stone amulets worn by the temple staff. But what if someone tries to reuse a name by accident, you ask? The priestess gives you a look that suggests you've just asked what happens if you sneeze on sacred incense. No one forgets a name, she says simply. You're handed a reed stylus and a scrap of papyrus. Try one, she says, gesturing toward a small tabby currently grooming one paw like it's preparing for a diplomatic summit. You hesitate, then write Mehet Nuru, she who pretends not to hear you calling her. The priestess reads it, nods. She'll accept that. The tabby promptly sneezes. Some historians argue that these names weren't as literal as the records make them seem, that they were poetic forms, spiritual metaphors. Others believe the names were functional, used for rituals, feeding schedules, and bedtime chants, and of course, a few scholars insist the names were purely symbolic, given to statues, not living cats. They've clearly never tried to hand-feed a cat named Sekemre, the uninterested. You sit back, watching as another scroll is tied and placed beside a sleeping feline prince. No name will be reused, not because of fear, but because there are always more names waiting to be found. You follow the priestess through a narrow passage that opens into a room lit by filtered sunbeams and the faintest scent of crushed myrrh. This is the scribe's chamber, a place where ink meets intention, and no parchment is ever wasted on a name that doesn't deserve it. The cats here are different, not in appearance. They still lounge like small deities, but in placement. Each one reclines beside a scribe, paw resting possessively on the edge of a papyrus scroll, guardians of their own identity paperwork. A young scribe motions you over. He's sitting cross-legged on a cushion, dipping a reed stylus into a dish of black ink that smells faintly of cedar. Beside him, A pot-bellied ginger cat watches like an editor with a deadline. The scribe explains that each sacred cat name is recorded 3 times, once in ink, once in carved wax, and once as a painted sigil. Why? Because cats are unpredictable, but bureaucracy is eternal. He shows you a half-completed scroll. At the top, Nebet Mare, she who watches the scribes, misspell things. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. She bit me when I left out the second R. Names, you discover, are never written in haste. Each syllable must reflect something essential. Fur color, temperament, moon phase at birth, or whether the cat has a history of knocking over temple relics. See this one? The scribe says, pointing to a pale gray tomcat lounging nearby. His name means he who appeared on the day of the sudden rain. The cat, now licking its tail, looks entirely indifferent. You're invited to try writing a name yourself. You dip the stylus. The ink is thicker than expected. The papyrus, softer. You choose a young black kitten, and after careful observation, write Jabast Heru. She who climbed the column and regretted nothing. The scribe nods. She's already planning a second ascent. A senior scribe shows you a wall of archived names, etched in limestone tiles stacked like shelves. Names from centuries ago. Some faded, some pristine, each one unique, each belonging to a feline who once ruled a sunlit corner of the temple. Historians often point to these inscriptions as proof of the elevated status of cats in ancient Egypt. But here, among the scribes, it feels less like evidence and more like ritualized affection, as though each name is a poem written for someone who probably knocked over the ink bowl 3 minutes later. You notice something odd. There are no names that mean good boy or pretty girl. The scribe explains, these cats don't need compliments. They need context. And context, apparently, comes with ink, patience, and the ability to rhyme moonrise with flea medicine. You leave the chamber with the scent of ink in your sleeves and the distinct feeling that every name carries a memory, and that some cats remember more than we do. The light outside the scribe's chamber has shifted, warmer now, like the temple itself is exhaling. You follow the priestess through a stone arch carved with the looping forms of cats, mid-pounce, mid-snooze, mid-world domination. She brings you to a long, sunlit colonnade where cats lounge along low ledges, glowing like embers. This is the gallery of fur. And yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. Here, names begin not with meaning, but with color. The priestess waves a hand over the first row of felines. Every fur tone, she says, has its own root syllable. You blink, she explains. A sandy beige tom starts with ka, a smoky gray queen, tef, black with copper undertones, re, orange striped with white. That's hinu, obviously. Each syllable builds the foundation for a cat's name. Like the key of a song, combine it with other syllables, gesture, personality, birth hour, and you get a unique name tuned to the cat's essence. She gestures toward a regal white cat, perched on a windowsill, fur catching every beam of sun, like she invented light. Her name is Tuaheru Senet, translation, she who glows with the confidence of 1,000 lamps. You sit cross-legged beside a marble platform where 3 kittens wrestle in a pile of spotted fur and bad decisions. Their patterns are wildly different. One like sand, one like dusk, one like spilled ink. The priestess invites you to guess their name roots. You try. K for the sandy one. She nods. Tef for the gray? Correct. Ray for the one biting the column? Almost, she says. But he's actually Shet. For chaos, of course. You ask if fur color always dictates the name. She shrugs. Almost always. Except for the ones who change. You raise an eyebrow. She gestures toward a long-haired calico, lounging like spilled velvet near a basket of papyrus scrolls. She was orange as sunrise for 3 months, the priestess says, then darkened. So we changed her name. To what? Haru Tefneset, she who was once fire, but now is mist. Some historians might argue that this level of naming nuance borders on excessive, that the average Egyptian probably didn't spend days choosing syllables for a temple cat's name, but others, especially the ones who've spent time in Bubastis, insist this was the norm. That fur color wasn't just descriptive, it was symbolic, a way of reflecting the cat's connection to the gods, to the stars, to the rhythm of river and reed. You look again at the trio of wrestling kittens. One has paused mid-pounce to stare at you, wide-eyed and utterly unbothered. You try a name aloud. Katef Meri, he who falls from ledges and blames the wind. He sneezes. The priestess smiles. He accepts. The afternoon sun glides across the temple's walls like honey poured over sandstone. You and the priestess step into a quieter courtyard, a shaded space where vines drape lazily from terracotta planters, and the only sound is the faint murmur of palm leaves in the breeze, and occasional, judgmental meowing. This is the court of temperament. Here, names are not chosen by appearance or lineage. They're earned by attitude. You're introduced to High Priest Seta, a man with robes as crisp as scrolls, and the long-suffering expression of someone who has, on more than one occasion, negotiated with a kitten. He sits cross-legged beside a low dais, where a particularly aloof cat sits with her back turned to everyone. She's still choosing her name, he says. You sit down beside him, cross-legged on a mat that smells like cedar and patience. He tells you that in this temple, personality traits often dictate the second syllable of a name, and sometimes the entire thing. A cat that greets guests with a chirp. She might earn Nafer, joyful. A cat who only eats from silver bowls? Hedjet, pure or spoiled, depending on tone. One who startles, knocks over an offering bowl, and runs in the opposite direction. Likely, Shemu, wandering spirit. You glance over at a ginger tomcat, currently staring at a pebble, as though it insulted his ancestors. That one? Seti says. Bast Henu Nakt, he who challenges the pebble, and always loses. It's perfect. You're handed a short scroll and shown a list of observed behaviors, written in short phrases like sleeps on sacred texts, steals ceremonial fish, and flirts with statues. These are not transgressions. These are identity clues. You're told that often cats aren't named for days or weeks until their true self settles. Seti adds that there was once a temple cat who went unnamed for a full season because she pretended to be a rock. We finally named her Tuamut Nebu, she who is present but pretends otherwise. Some scholars question whether such names were ever this precise, arguing that they likely belonged to types of cats rather than individuals. But the residents of Bubastis disagree. Each cat, they say, arrives with a personality stitched into its whiskers. You're asked to help name a new arrival, a sleek black kitten currently purring directly into a reed basket. You observe. She flips the basket over, then sits inside it, like this was the plan all along. You smile and write, Re Henu Sat. She who knows chaos is a cozy place. Seti reads it, then chuckles. She'll ignore you forever now. That's how you know it's perfect. As the breeze picks up, the cats stretch, nap, or glare softly into the distance, and you realize something. The name isn't just a label. It's a mirror, held up with affection. The light has mellowed into that golden late afternoon kind of hush, the sort of hour when even the cats seem to pause their imperial attitudes in favor of long stretches and luxurious naps. You're brought to the ceremonial courtyard, where a shallow pool reflects the pillars above, and petals drift lazily on the water's surface, like they too are waiting for something. The priestess adjusts her sash and tells you it's time for the naming ceremony. You expect incense, chants, maybe a dramatic horn section. Instead, you're handed a tiny clay bowl filled with milk warmed by the sun, and a lotus petal floating on top like a decorative accent that somehow carries spiritual weight. A row of 5 cats sits atop a wide stone ledge, each one in a different phase of pretending not to care. But you're informed, with great seriousness, that they're all very aware this is about them. The youngest is a pale cream kitten with paws too big for her body. She blinks slowly, then promptly lies down and puts one foot in the milk bowl before anyone can stop her. She's ready, the priestess says, as if that was a deliberate rite of passage. A small crowd of temple staff gathers. Everyone barefoot, everyone quiet. The naming ritual, it turns out, involves no booming declarations or theatrical gestures, just 4 essential elements: the offering of milk, the placing of a palm leaf, the drawing of a single glyph in the sand, and 4 yawns. Yes, yawns. Each must come from someone different. It's believed the cat should enter her name surrounded by peace, slowness, and absolute disinterest from the universe, so the ceremony doesn't attract any jealous spirits. You contribute the 3rd yawn. It's genuine and contagious. The priestess writes the name in a soft spiral in the sand. Tef Nuru Bastet, she who steps in milk without regret. The crowd murmurs its approval. The kitten sneezes. The name is sealed. Each scroll bearing the new name is then tied with reed cord and carried by a scribe who sings a soft melody that drifts like wind through linen. The melody doesn't mention the name. It simply holds it, like a lullaby with no lyrics. Some historians scoff at the idea that ancient Egyptians had full-blown ceremonies for naming temple cats. They suggest it was symbolic, or perhaps only performed during certain festivals. But from where you're sitting, ankles crossed, pedal on your lap, cat hair in your sleeve. It doesn't feel optional. It feels expected. You're offered another scroll to hold, this one for a cat not yet named. It's blank, except for a faint watermark in the shape of a paw print. You wonder how long it will take for that name to arrive. The priestess leans in. Some cats don't come for a name, she whispers. They come to remind us how quiet power sounds. The kitten, still sticky from milk, climbs into your lap and purrs like the world is just soft enough today. You wake to the sound of purring. Not one cat, several, and not tentative purring, but that deep, steady, motorboat on the Nile kind of purring that says, "You belong to us now." You open your eyes beneath a linen canopy in the guest quarters of the temple, where two cats are curled against your side, one on your chest, and another confidently sleeping across your legs, as if it were claiming territory for a minor god. The priestess arrives with a smirk. They've accepted your presence. You should be honored or concerned. She lifts the smallest one off your face and beckons you outside. This morning's lesson? Why some cats had 3 names. You follow her to a chamber lined with stone cubbies, each one containing a scroll, a small cat carving, and a palm-sized charm. She begins the explanation. The first name, she says, is what everyone knows. It's the name spoken in the open, recorded in temple records, whispered when offering food or affection. You nod. So far, so human. The second name is private, used only in sacred spaces, whispered during rituals, sung during blessings, and sometimes only spoken by the high priest or priestess. You raise your eyebrows. And the third, she lowers her voice. Only the cat knows that one. Of course. You are handed a scroll marked with 3 glyphs. The first is easy to read. Kamesut, he who brings sleep to everyone but himself. The second is more complex. A layered set of symbols, meaning something like guardian between thresholds. The third, a blank space. You point to it. The priestess smiles. We don't write what we aren't meant to know. Some scholars believe these multiple names were just tiers of honorifics, similar to royal titles. Others believe they were part of a magical system, allowing cats to act as spiritual intermediaries. But here, standing among the scrolls and silent feline witnesses, you get the feeling that naming was more about listening than labeling. You sit near a wall of carvings, each cat figure slightly different. Some sleek, some squat, all poised with that particular feline arrogance. Below each is a symbol only the priests recognize. You watch as a priest lights a bit of incense and murmurs a name, only the second one, and places a fig beside a statue. Offerings, you ask? Reminders, the priestess replies, of the role the cat played, not in the temple, but in the spirit of the place. Later, you observe a ceremony where a newly arrived kitten is given her first name. The second will come later. The third, maybe never. She's called Sefet Teti, she who watches with one eye closed. She immediately wanders off to nap in someone's sandal. You realize then that each name, first, second, third, isn't just for identity, it's for layers. Cats, the Egyptians believed, were never just one thing. They were protectors, companions, omens, comedians, and, depending on the hour, agents of minor chaos. You leave the chamber thinking about your own name and whether you too are living with one that no one else hears. The afternoon heat is thick now, lazy, soft, the kind that makes even the sun seem drowsy. You find yourself in the library wing of the temple, a surprisingly cool chamber lined with scrolls, reed baskets, and the occasional cat curled up in a nook like a living punctuation mark. You're here to meet scribe Hori. Hori is thin as a stylus, ink-stained at the fingertips, and rumored to have once transcribed the entire genealogy of a temple cat lineage onto a single scroll that unrolls past the length of 2 chariots. He doesn't look up as you enter, just gestures toward a stone bench and says, "We're tracing ancestry." You sit. Across from you is a long scroll, half unfurled, covered in tiny, meticulous glyphs. At the top, a name, Ba Nefu Keset, he who dreamed of fireflies. 14 generations, Hori murmurs, tapping the scroll with a polished reed. You blink. Of cats, he clarifies, all in this temple, all descended from the same queen. You lean forward. The names are arranged like branches, each feline connected to the next with small symbols, paw prints, moons, fish bones. You spot recurring name elements, Tef, Ka, Het, Shemu. Hori explains they're inherited, like heirlooms or favorite sunbeams. This one, he says, pointing to a middle branch, was named Henu Teti Re, he who got stuck in a jar. A bold hunter, terrible sense of spatial awareness. The scroll continues. Some cats are noted as having served during major festivals. Others appear briefly, born, named, and remembered with a single line. He purred through storms. You notice certain names marked with tiny gold dots. Royal service, Hori explains. These cats were invited to pharaonic ceremonies, usually for ambiance and pest control. Historians often gloss over feline genealogy in Egyptian temples, assuming it was anecdotal or symbolic. But here, in this chamber that smells of ink, wax, and faint cat breath, you see how seriously it was taken. Names weren't just for the living. They were bridges between fur and flame, between ancestors and alley shadows. You trace one lineage down to the present, a small tabby named Shemuhatba, she who sleeps through incantations. She's in the west wing, Hori notes, won't get up until dusk. You realize, with a mix of awe and amusement, that cats here are more than residents. Their history, alive, documented, sleeping under scrolls of their own stories. You ask Hori, what happens if a name reappears? By mistake. He looks scandalized. We burn the ink, apologize to the goddess, and feed the entire scribe circle sardines. Fair enough. Before you leave, Hori carefully rolls the scroll back into its basket and ties it with a ribbon of blue linen. He hands you a tiny scrap with a single name glyph inked in gold. For your records, he says. You turn it over. It reads, K Tef Neset, you who walk among stories, with ink on your sleeve. You smile, and somewhere behind a stack of scrolls, a cat sneezes approvingly. You step outside the library, scroll still in hand, and the late afternoon breeze greets you like an old friend with nothing urgent to say. It's softer now, slower, like the temple itself is settling in for a nap. Cats stretch along ledges, flicking their tails with the kind of effortlessness only beings utterly secure in their place can manage. You follow the priestess down a narrow, shaded corridor that opens into a circular courtyard ringed with low cushions, copper bowls, and half-finished clay figurines. This is where you learn something surprising. Not all cats were named at birth. Some waited and waited until their true personality or divine message revealed itself. You're introduced to an elder named Tani, who wears more beads than linen and speaks so softly you're not sure if she's whispering to you or to the nearest cat. Probably both. She tells you that in many cases, temple kittens would live for days or even weeks without a name, observed, recorded, watched during sleep, play, and especially during meals. The bowl test, she says, nodding solemnly. You tilt your head. She gestures to a stone platform where 3 kittens are presented with identical bowls of fish, each spaced equally apart. The kittens pause, assess, then proceed to switch bowls halfway through and eat from each other's plates. Tani hums thoughtfully. One is a strategist. One is a follower. One is a little agent of chaos. That's our Shemu. She makes a note on a palm leaf notepad, her handwriting like soft waves. You are shown other methods of observation. The cushion ritual, where a cat chooses which of 4 soft places to nap. The shadow test, where priests note whether a kitten chases, ignores, or befriends its own shadow. And the audience trial, in which a cat is simply introduced to a room full of people and judged entirely on whether it leaves or stays. You watch a quiet, gold-eyed cat slowly lie down in the center of a reed mat and begin to purr, oblivious to the 30 people watching. She's ready, Tani says. She knows this is her stage. Some scholars believe this process was practical, meant to avoid naming a cat only for it to later develop a personality, so at odds with its name that it caused ritual confusion. Others suggest it was spiritual, that a name given too soon might misalign a cat's essence with the gods. Tani smiles. Names aren't prizes, she says. They're mirrors, but the cat has to walk past them on its own. You're invited to assist in one final test, the mirror ritual. A polished bronze disc is placed in front of a kitten. If the cat looks at its reflection and blinks slowly, it is considered ready. If it licks the mirror, it's considered playful. If it knocks the mirror off the pedestal and walks away, that one, Tani says, already has a name. It's no, not that one again. You write down a name for a patient black and white kitten who blinked at her reflection 3 times, then fell asleep with one paw on the bronze. Het Nebutef. She who sees herself clearly and doesn't make a fuss about it. Tani nods. She'll wear it well. As the sun slides behind the temple walls, the unnamed become named. The scrolls are tied, the bowls are washed, and the courtyard settles, once again, into a hush filled with purring, light snoring, and the occasional sound of paws patting across sacred stone. The temple's main hall hums gently with a low thrum of evening when sunlight spills in sideways and everything is amber. You're seated beside a tall column etched with depictions of Bastet, goddess of protection, perfume, and the very specific grace of feline indifference. Tonight, The priests are telling stories, but not just any stories. These are tales of divine displeasure, not from gods toward mortals, from gods toward nicknames. You sip from a clay cup of spiced hibiscus as a young scribe explains how, in the time of Pharaoh Jedkare, a sacred cat was given the temple name Hetep Ma Nefru, she who listens to wind over sand, a beautiful, poetic name, but the scribes, being scribes, got lazy. They began calling her Nef Nef. It stuck. For a while, until one morning, every scroll in the Hall of Records was mysteriously rearranged in alphabetical order by the second syllable of every third name. The priests saw this as a warning. They restored her full name. The scrolls returned to normal. You chuckle. Coincidence? The priest beside you leans in. No one has used Nef Nef since. Another story tells of Ka Tefre, he who watches the fire without blinking. He was a black cat of immense stature and notable tail volume. His handlers affectionately called him Tef Tef. The following week, the temple's incense stores were entirely raided by rodents. The cats didn't move. They just sat and stared. Punishment? Protest. Divine joke? The priests renamed him formally again, adding Sachem to his title, making it longer, harder to shorten, and frankly, impossible to shout across the courtyard. But the rodents vanished the next day. Some historians laugh these tales off as folklore, but in Bubastis, no one shortens a sacred name, at least not without bribes, blessings, or 3 days of groveling. You ask if pet names or private names were ever allowed. The high priestess says yes, but only among caretakers, and only whispered. Loud nicknames, they believed, diluted the power of the true name. You watch as a young acolyte feeds a long-haired ginger cat while whispering something into her ear. The cat purrs, nuzzles his hand, and then walks away with the satisfaction of one who chooses forgiveness. You're told there's a difference between a name and a title you can earn, a name you must embody. Later, in the quiet of the sculpture hall, you pass a carving of a cat with the name Henu Neset Tua, she who let no one rename her. You pause. She looks oddly familiar. Then a paw bats your scroll pouch from behind. You turn. The real Henu is already sauntering off, tail high, daring you to call her anything else. You don't. It's past twilight now, and the temple takes on a different texture. Shadows stretch longer. The air cools. Cats seem to multiply, appearing from places that didn't exist earlier, as though darkness itself breeds whiskers and soft paw pads. The priestess lights a clay lantern and leads you to a small, enclosed garden. This, she whispers, is where the cat named itself. You stop walking. She gestures toward a stone bench. It's a story. You sit, and she begins. Long ago, no, longer than that, there was a cat born on a lunar eclipse, pale, silent, with eyes like storm clouds, and a habit of appearing in locked rooms. No one could name it. Every scroll burned. Every spoken title was forgotten. It ignored every attempt at calling. You nod slowly. So what happened? The high priest gave up, she says, and left a blank scroll beside the cat while it slept. In the morning, The scroll held a single glyph. No one knew how it got there, but the ink was dry and the meaning clear. Neb Shemuka, I name myself. You sit with that. The priestess smiles. It never responded to anyone again, except when addressed by that name. Some call it legend. Others call it nonsense. But the carving of Neb Shemuka still sits in the garden, shaded by sycamore and vines, eyes narrowed in eternal private amusement. As you walk through the space, more recent, cats lounge on stone ledges. Each has a scroll nearby, some written, some not. The unwritten ones are curious. Names waiting to happen, or names already known and simply unshared. One kitten, barely more than fluff, perches near the edge of a lily pond. She stares at her reflection, doesn't blink, doesn't move. You and the priestess exchange a glance. Give it time, she says. Some historians believe this tale was created to emphasize the power of the feline spirit, that unlike other temple animals, cats were sovereign, agents of their own identity. Others think it's just a charming bedtime myth for scribes with too many duties and not enough ink. You watch as the kitten finally turns away from the water and pads toward you. She stops at your feet, tilts her head, and then walks away. The priestess says nothing. You don't either, because some stories don't end with a scroll. They end with silence and footsteps. By moonrise, the temple feels like a dream that hasn't fully decided if it wants to end. You follow the glow of oil lamps through narrow corridors into the inner sanctum, a place not many are invited. It's hushed here. Even the cats walk slower, as if their paws have been dipped in moonlight. The priestess places a finger to her lips. This is where we sing the names. You blink. Sing? She nods. Some names aren't spoken. Not properly. They're too layered, too soft, so we sing them. You step into the chamber and are surrounded by a sound you didn't expect. Gentle harmonies, no words, just breath and tone. 3 priests seated in a triangle hum low. Steady notes while a 4th brushes her fingers along a wind chime made of hollow reeds. In the center of the space lies a single, sleeping cat, old, gray-furred, one ear slightly bent. His scroll is open, beside him, but unreadable, covered in overlapping glyphs that seem to shimmer if you stare too long. You're told his name is Sekem Tuare Masut, he who dreams in circles and listens to the rain, but no one says it aloud. Only the melody holds it. The priestess explains that some names are meant to be remembered by tone, not text, that the act of singing the name aligns the cat's spirit with the gods and allows the memory of that name to ripple across the reeds, the stones, the paws of every kitten that passes by. You listen, and then something happens. The cat opens one eye, looks directly at you, and blinks. The singing softens, shifts key. You've been noticed, honored maybe. You're handed a small wind chime, made from a fishbone, and 3 lengths of palm fiber. For the cat's name, she whispers, to carry it. You ask if everyone receives one. No, she says. Only those the cat acknowledges. You glance again at the sleeping figure. He's curled into himself now, tail tucked around his body like a spiral. His name complete. his melody fading into the corners of the room like incense. Historians rarely mention sung names. There are no surviving notations, no scores, just mentions of sound-based ceremonies or ritual vocalizations. But here, in the quiet center of Bastet's temple, you realize the name isn't about syllables. It's about presence. You leave the chamber slowly, holding the chime against your chest, and in the hall outside, a kitten bats at it once, just enough to make a sound. A whisper of a name, a soft hello. The wind changes slightly as you cross into the western garden, a place filled with low stone benches, wild reeds, and the smell of sweet ash and river clay. The moon is high now, and everything glows as if dipped in soft silver. Here, the priestess says, cat names become more than names. They become amulets. You're led to a table covered in charms, tiny, delicate, shaped from fired clay, bone, lapis, and carved wood. Each one bears a name, not always the full name, but a glyph, a curve, a sound turned to symbol. These are worn by the cats, she explains, or buried near their food bowls, or hidden under the stones they sleep on. You pick one up, an ochre disc with a single spiral etched in the center. It's warm, as if recently held. Whose was this? Bast Marehet, she replies. She, who fears nothing and sleeps through thunder. You nod. The amulet feels steady in your palm. You're shown how they're made. Bark ash for strength, river clay for memory. A whisper of oil pressed into the grooves as the name is carved, not spoken, but breathed. The process is more than craft. It's intention. Some believe the name protects the cat, the priestess tells you. Others believe the cat protects the name. Either way, the amulet becomes more than just a tag. It's a soft shield, a reminder, a grounding weight for a spirit made of movement and mood swings. You notice a charm that split clean down the middle. That one cracked when its cat passed, she says. It stayed intact until that moment. Then, gone. You feel the weight of that in your chest. Historians often classify these objects as ornamental, functional, decorative. But they're more than that here. They are talismans, meant not to be seen, but felt, under paw, beside rib, within nest. You're invited to make your own. The clay is soft, earthy. You mold a small disc, press your thumb gently in the center, and after a moment of thought, inscribe 3 curling lines. You don't give them a meaning exactly. You just let your hand move. The priestess nods. That will do. She places it beside a curled-up tabby kitten who hasn't woken since your arrival, and maybe never will. Some names are for the living, some are for remembering, and some, like this, are both. You leave the garden quietly, your hands slightly dusty, your heart heavier and lighter at the same time. And above, on a stone ledge, a cat watches. You don't know its name, but it knows yours. You wake before sunrise, not because of any noise, but because the stillness itself is so complete, so deliberate, it gently pulls you back into waking. The temple is wrapped in pale blue quiet, like it's waiting to be painted back into color. You make your way through the inner corridor, guided now more by familiarity than instruction. You know the paths. You know where to step to avoid waking the cats curled beneath the stone benches, and you know exactly where you're going. The debate hall. It sounds far more dramatic than it is. This isn't a courtroom. It's a wide, circular room with stone, cushions, and low tables, used for discussions, not of politics, but of proper naming procedure. Because, of course, not all names are agreed upon without question. You arrive to find two scribes already mid-argument, speaking in hushed but insistent tones, gesturing at an open scroll between them. She was born on the day of the flood, one insists, but she didn't open her eyes until the new moon. The other counters. You sit beside them. They're debating the proper second syllable of a name. One wants het, of water. The other prefers set, of night. The cat in question is curled nearby, grooming her back foot, entirely uninterested in the outcome. You ask if the cat's behavior offers any clues. They pause. One scribe sighs. She chased a shadow into the scribe's bathhouse yesterday. The other nods. Set, then. They write, Kaset Heru, she who watches the night ripple. Even naming, it turns out, is a collaborative act, not of authority, but of attentive compromise. Sometimes scribes argue for hours. There was once a debate that lasted 3 days over whether a kitten was more accurately described as sacredly stubborn or just plain difficult. In the end, the cat stole the scroll and buried it. The matter was declared resolved by divine paw. Some historians dismiss these stories as exaggeration, the temple equivalent of office gossip. But sitting here, in this space of care and quiet disagreement, you see the truth. This isn't just pedantry, it's devotion. Each name must fit, not perfectly, but truly. Later, a young scribe asks for your opinion. A cat has shown signs of both stillness and mischief. You suggest Het Meritua, she who pretends to sleep while planning escape. The scribes pause. Consider. Then one writes it down with a smile. She'll like that. The cat promptly knocks over the inkwell. You spend the rest of the morning listening to more debates. No shouting, no ego. Just quiet voices trying to do justice to a creature that may or may not care. And you wonder if this kind of reverence, the patient kind, the attentive kind, might be the closest thing we have to true naming. The final evening arrives not with fanfare, but with the quiet certainty of something gently concluding. You sit beneath a fig tree in the outer garden, where the first cat you met, Neba Meow, he who judges you, while napping, blinks at you from his perch and then returns to his nap, unbothered. Tonight, the last kitten will be named. She's small, gray, one ear slightly bent, as if she emerged into the world mid-conversation and never quite caught up. She trots toward you across the stone path with that unmistakable confidence of someone who has never known rejection, or maybe doesn't believe in it. The priestess joins you with a scroll. It's blank. She hands it to you. No pressure, she says. You laugh softly, but you know this part now. You've watched the ceremonies, heard the songs, held the amulets, listened to the debates, and more importantly, you've watched her. She chases shadows only when no one is looking. She prefers silence to noise, but sleeps near doorways, like she's waiting for change. You dip a reed into ink and write, Tef Nebet Heru, she who walks between thresholds without asking permission. The priestess nods. You've learned. She takes the scroll, ties it with ribbon, and places it beside the kitten, who promptly sits on it. Of course, the rest of the temple feels hushed, like it's holding the space for this moment. A few cats stretch in windowsills. Others blink slowly from shaded corners. And you feel full. Not overwhelmed, not heavy, just held. Later, the priestess walks with you through the sleeping corridors. There are no torches, only the soft blue of starlight seeping through lattice work and fur. She says, You'll forget some names. You nod, but the feeling of them, the rhythm, the breath behind them, that stays. You stop by the sculpture, garden, one last glance. The wind moves, just slightly, and a wind chime somewhere behind you answers, It's time. You leave the temple quietly, your steps soft, your thoughts softer. The cats do not follow, but you know they're watching, and that's enough. Now, wherever you are, resting, listening, breathing softly in a quiet room, let the story fade like paw prints in the sand. The names you heard tonight aren't just syllables. They're small doors, whispers, carvings in the stillness that help you find your own rhythm in the hush of evening. Let your breath slow. Let the corners of your mind soften. You've walked among pillars and shadows, scrolls and ink, laughter and purring. You've listened to songs that had no words, and watched names form like dew on the fur of a sleepy kitten. Let all of that settle now, like dust in golden light. You are safe here, in this space of warmth and quiet observation. There's no need to remember every name. They remember you. Somewhere, a kitten is curling beside an offering bowl. A scroll waits to be written. A breeze carries your presence through the temple, as soft as sleep. And you are already halfway between waking and dreaming. Let yourself go the rest of the way. The fig tree is still. The ink has dried. And the cats, they are exactly where they want to be.